Welcome everybody to another week of Game Wisdom Live for June 23rd, 2019. Of course, I am Josh Beiser, and we got another week of discussing game industry topics and design. As always, we'll begin with some updates, and hey Draken, thanks for coming on. He's been around like on and off on the streams. I'm not sure, we're missing his cooking segments though. But for this week, I've contacted more libraries, and I've actually heard a few yeses. And I have a new presentation set for October on a topic that we haven't done yet. So I'm going to be spending some time learning Mario Maker 2, as well as maybe setting up to possibly stream it as well. I'm in the process of looking at capture cards and all the fun stuff of setting up for a Nintendo Switch stream. If that all works accordingly, we may be set up to do a Mario Odyssey or Breath of the Wild Let's Play, possibly in the future. But work continues on book number 2. I just heard I spent the weekend having to collect more images for the book because they didn't like the ones I submitted the first time. And the book has a due date for October. In fact, if I pull this up just right... One second, everybody. I know it's a big reveal right now. But, there we go. My second book officially has a page up. That means it is coming, folks. And don't worry, there will be a different cover art than this. I assure you on that. That's their stock image for it. But you can pre-order book number 2 now. I don't know if the price is going to go up after it comes out. The other book is $49.95. They may do something like that, or they may just have it at a lower price. But it's going to be a far bigger book than the first one. I can tell you that much for sure. And I'm waiting to hear back on what we're going to be doing about book number 3 on horror design. And if everything goes accordingly, you can better believe there's going to be a lot of scary games I'll be playing on stream in the coming months. But let me get that out there. Still a lot to discuss about what's going on in the game industry. If you missed my tweet, we have 2 major topics we'll be discussing this week. The first one discussing the Indiepocalypse, I'm sorry. And the second one talking about the importance of first impressions when it comes to a game. Oh, and by the way, here's a bit of a future tease. Every time somebody says they're too scared to play a game, a part of me laughs evilly in the back of my mind. So I will be judging all of you who don't attend the horror streams. Just a little bit, not a whole lot. But let's begin. Games we've been playing. We looked at the Outer Wilds, which I'm still half sold on that one. Again, it seems more narrative than actual... oh, yes, I did. More narrative than gameplay focused, but it's got a very interesting hook. I think probably my favorite game this week that we played was Children of Morta, which that game looks very impressive, and I can't wait to see that one come out in September. They Are Billions. We've been kind of going on and off about that, and that's going to probably be part of our talk later on in our stream today. And what other games have we been playing? Oh, we played Judgment, the next game from Yakuza developers, which kind of feels like Yakuza Light right now. But in terms of some news that's been going on, the 2 pieces of news that have been kind of dominating, I guess, people's discussion this week, one being probably a lot more serious than the other. The first one has to do with EA. And if I was prepared, I would have had this all set up before, rather than me trying to scan Gamasutra as quickly as possible for this news piece here. Where are you? I just saw it. Oh, while I'm looking that up, it's been also announced sadly that Alpha Protocol has been delisted off of Steam, so I think we may be doing a play of that tonight. Kind of showing that one off, because it always sucks when a game gets knocked off like that. Did I just like completely scan over and not even realize it? Or are they just like removing talks about loot boxes? Gamasutra also seems to be very nervous about posting pieces when it comes to the loot box. Yeah, I just saw it like 5 minutes ago. Now I can't find it. But anyway, the news that kind of shook, at least from that side of things, was that EA was called for to testify about their use of loot boxes. And they found that it was, or in their words, that there was nothing wrong with it, and they're just called surprise mechanics. That there's nothing illegal or wrong about them. And of course, a whole lot of people are not taking that one. And again, we just had our whole talk with Ramin. I think he even posted on the Gamasutra mention about this idea that they're trying to, downplay the importance of loot boxes. But it is a very serious issue, especially with games more and more being designed around them or around that kind of monetization. Yeah, I know Fortnite has a lot in terms of loot box, but they're also being called for in terms of, the amount of crunch it takes to work on Fortnite, release daily things. Here it is. I found the piece right here. Let me pull that back up. Sadly, no Rob. He's still out, and Shark is still trying to get internet to his house. But yeah, we may need to find a replacement co-host, at least for a few weeks. We'll see who we can get. But here is the article while my nose is just itching like crazy. So they were called to address the UK's Parliament Digital Culture, Media and Sports Committee. And let's see some of their lovely quotes. Yeah, here's the big one. If you go to a store that sells a lot of toys and you do a search for surprise toys, what you'll find is that this is something that people enjoy. They enjoy surprises. It's something that's been part of toys for years. Whether it's been a part of toys for years, whether it's Kinder Eggs or Hatchimals or LOL Surprise. I have never heard of that last one, but again, I think I may be old there. A 2-week break on Fortnite. So that means Fortnite will be dead by the 8th day, right? But instead, we think it's like many other products that people enjoy in a very healthy way and like the element of the surprise. Of course they like the element of the surprise. That's the whole idea of the conditioning behind loot boxes. The problem, though, is that when they're inherently designed, and so is the game, around getting you or forcing you to spend money to have any chance of succeeding. And there's Ramin's sharp retort there. But yeah, it is just basically psychological conditioning to convince people to spend money. And whether you call it a surprise box or I already forgot their horrible term for it. Surprise mechanic, a Kinder Egg or whatever. It's still designed to get people or convince them that what they're spending on for money is of value or has value to the player. And again, the big difference is that when we talk about loot boxes, there is no rules for how you're supposed to conduct yourself when it comes to loot box design. And that's a major part of this. Especially the fact that when we talk about these little surprise mechanics, you're not, that does not control you playing a video game or give you success or failure. So yes, you're spending, 50 cents, $1 or whatever. How much is a Kinder Egg? Oh wait, it says that they were illegal. They were made illegal due to like the little parts in them. Crazy. But again, the big point is that with these little toys and stuff like that, you are spending money and getting something quantifiable. You're getting a little toy. You can trade that with your friends. You can do whatever the hell you want with it. When you're playing a loot box game, if you don't get what you need or anything like that, you have to keep spending that money, and people can, of course, get an advantage on you. It's not like if you buy the wrong Kinder Egg, you are socially unacceptable until you get the right one. But when you're playing these games that are designed around loot boxes, if you get the wrong one, that puts you at a massive disadvantage compared to everybody else, or to people who spend more money. And again, like we had our discussion with Ramin about this whole idea of the loot box bill and things like that the game industry has done horrible in this approach. And I think my favorite part of that talk is that I was considered the friendlier one towards loot boxes. I thought, hey, maybe we can still do something with them if they change it to X, Y, and Z. Ramin was like, no, we should just, no, get rid of them all. Destroy that model. But it's sounding like unless the industry does come around, that will probably have to be the status quo, or at least what the government will enforce. And if they do along the lines of that bill, it will pretty much destroy anything that has to do with free-to-play design going forward. But the other bit of news, or actually there's another topic, what Draken was mentioning about the fact that we're going more and more forward with streaming services and stuff like that for the future. This was, of course, announced during E3, but of course, we have the Xbox Games Pass that's been around. We have PS Now. Ubisoft is planning one. EA already has one. No, I'm sorry. Microsoft is announcing the Xbox Games Pass for the PC. And everybody's trying to go forward with streaming / subscription services as the future. And it's a very weird case to be in, I think. For, again, like when all this stuff was first being discussed 6-7 years ago, everyone thought this was not going to happen. Famously, Xbox One removed their subscription or their digital model because of the fact they were going to get rid of the physical release. And now we're seeing that more and more people are accepting of that. And of course, that also calls into question about what is going to happen to GameStop, considering the fact that GameStop has made their living off of used games and physical copies. And as we all remember, for pretty much the 80s into the probably last decade, retail stores had tremendous power and leeway over what games you could play and experience. For the 80s and 90s, of course, Nintendo had to censor a lot of games for the NES and SNES, or, big box stores like Target, Walmart, Kmart, and stuff like that wouldn't allow them. Likewise, rental services like Blockbuster, which pretty much I'm sure all the kids watching this have no idea what we're talking about there. But it seems like it's finally time for GameStop to be kind of on the chopping block. Because again, why should I, rush to your store, spend full price on a game, if I can just buy a copy of it online, sometimes very or far cheaper than what would be at in the store? Not only that, but I can also avoid a lot of the hassle of dealing with, copies running out. Everyone loves pre-order bonuses, especially if they run out of pre-orders. And it seems like, again, the digital is going to be the way of the future. I mean, for us on the PC side, that's kind of been the standard for a very long time. I mean, other than, buying a copy cheap, like I did with The Evil Within 2, all my games on the PC have been through a digital store. Epic, Steam, GOG, Humble, you name it. And I guess here's a question for you guys watching. Can you think of any... when was the last time you bought a physical copy of a PC game? Not counting a collector's edition or, something big and fancy that has to be physical. Because other than those, I can't think of any. But again, it's going to be very interesting to see how the industry adapts to this. Again, even television has gone this route with digital streaming, Netflix, Hulu, what was it? I forget the Amazon Prime one, and so on. But the good news, and this kind of is also a really great segue into our first major topic, is that it has opened the door to the fact that you don't need to care about Kmart or Walmart, any of those retail stores, if you want your game to be a success. And again, this is a big contrast about 15, 20 years ago, when the whole dream was, if I can just get my game to Toys R Us, I'll be rich and famous. Which, speaking of, Toys R Us is actually set to come back after going bankrupt. I think that was last year. So Toys R Us will probably never die. And maybe that will happen to GameStop. Now, the other bit of weirdness in terms of news this week is this whole idea of, again, crazy fandoms and situations like that. There's a whole discussion about people arguing about Tifa's a cup size in Final Fantasy VII. That got, the YouTubers all hot and bothered. I just heard something about, because a kid said something bad about Keanu Reeves during the CG Project Red announcement, that he got attacked by all their fans. This is one of those kids from that React video series. But yeah, just a very weird week, at least in terms of those topics. And something tells me it's not going to get any better, as I'm sure people are going to be talking about Cyberpunk and CD Projekt Red for the next, what is it coming out next year? I buy physical copies for PS4 stuff again if it's on sale. But yeah, I have not bought a brand new physical game unless it's a Nintendo something. But PC wise, I can't even remember the last time I had to buy one like that. But in terms of our first topic this week, this has to do with everybody's favorite one, the quote-unquote Indiepocalypse. And we're going to go into our little feature here for that. So, it was announced, or at GDC 2019, Jason Rower, he is the developer behind the Castle Doctrine, 1 Hour, 1 Life. He makes a lot of very unique, very experimental games, gave a talk. And unfortunately, I don't think I can actually stream it with sound. So I'm just going to let it play in the background while I'm having my whole little discussion here about it. Yeah. The Dreamcast. But his talk focused on this idea of the Indiepocalypse. And again, it's a term that had to do, or is a term that's been thrown around by indie developers for years now. Indies are dying. The indie bubble has burst. We're all, everybody's going to run out. And during the video, he talked about the differences between what it was like to be on Steam or be an indie developer in 2014 versus today. Now, the footage that you're seeing right now from the talk are basically critical darlings that, just in terms of their market success, failed tremendously. And again, these are games that if you're on, Twitter, or you have friends or people who are in the game industry, they probably didn't shut up about these games for weeks and months. I think either it came up or I may have passed it. Let's see. No. Scanner Sombra, that's another very interesting point. I'll come back to that one in a minute. Where is it? I thought it came up on this list. Let's see. I think I'm just missing it. But he brought up Where the Water Tastes Like Wine. And again, that was one that we discussed as well after the developer gave a post-mortem about it. But these are games that came out to be critical darlings that just did not work. And again, 11 concurrent players is not what you want to hear from a game from the creators of Gone Home. Another title that I'm sure every one of you have either heard or have played at some point. And again, this is his game, 1 Hour, 1 Life, that has 110. And again, this has always been that weird thing. I'm going to be making a separate video about this idea of what does success mean in the game industry. But 110 concurrent players, I think to a lot of people, that doesn't sound like a success. But for him, it was a massive success for his game. So there's his title. So he made some really good money off of 1 Hour, 1 Life. And again, and that's that weird thing. To some of you, $685,595 sounds like he's now rich and can retire. To probably a few others, that sounds like nothing. And that's always that very weird thing about what it means to be successful when you're releasing these games. Old games still making money. Again, for those of you watching this was done during GDC 2019, so I think that was March or April of this year. So again, the stats that you're seeing on screen are not accurate to right now. But from this talk, I'm going to fast forward a little bit here. He brought up some more recently released games in terms of their success. I never played Feed and Grow Fish, but these are titles that are doing well. Here are some more of them. Although I think having DLC in your list may be a little disingenuous right there. But these are games I'm sure we've at least a few of us have played during our last few months here. Dream Daddy, I did not play that one. Bow Block Feeder, that's one we of course know about. Now let's see, State of Decay, Lego Worlds. Never played The Escapists. I'm actually trying to scan this list myself here. There's South Park right there. So he's listing both AAA and indies in the same block there. But from his video, and one of the points he discussed was how the market has changed. And let me see if I get to that slide really fast, where he kind of brought up the differences. Oh wait, there's one other one that I want to show. Where is it? So this was what the sales results of his games. The red line being the Castle Doctrine that was released in 2014, and 1 Hour in Life released in 2018. And you can see a very big difference in terms of success. And he attributed it to several factors. One being, of course, the amount of coverage got on YouTube. And let's see, I think this is when he brought up, I keep missing, okay, there it is. There is Where the Water Tastes Like Wine. 4 concurrent players, average play time of 4.5 hours, 2.5 hours. Here's his play time. And he's dancing, or he mentioned this point. I think this is the slide. That's not the slide. This thing is just the the timer of the bomb does not seem to track well. There we go. But this is the point that he wanted to make. The difference between a consumable game and a unique situation generator. And I do have something that I want to add to this, but from his talk, a consumable game is something that is designed around a very fixed experience. It's almost like, you're watching a movie or you're having a meal. It's one experience, it's done, and then you move on to the next, or the next meal, or the next show. A unique experience generator is something that's designed around whether you are playing it for a long period of time, or it allows for more, malleability in terms of the design. My voice is actually dying. It will probably die several more times over the course of our stream. But from these kinds of discussions, when we look at the state of the market, especially for a lot of where the indie market came from, wow, that's not a good sign, folks. But when we look at where the independent scene came from for a lot of developers, it was for these very small, very unique games that are designed around, again, a very fixed experience. To the Moon being a really good example. Even Introversion's previous games, like Uplink, Darwinia, and so on. And if you look at this chart, you can see how, despite Jonathan Blow's coverage or his clout in the game industry, especially among independent developers, Subnautica blew the Witness out of the water, no pun intended there. And when we talk about these games that are designed around giving the player unique experiences, it's something that every player can experience the game differently. Now, of course, we could argue that those 4 games aren't probably considered indie games, especially the top right one, although I'm sure none of you have ever heard of it. But the point is that the games that are doing really well in the market, at least according to Jason, are those that it's kind of like, instead of you playing a game like, did you play this game, did you get to this point, blah blah blah, it's more like, I played this and then this happened. It's like, oh my god, it's so crazy. Oh, but I played it and this happened to me. And it's this idea that we're playing these games that, while they are built around, again, a set design, it allows a player to experience things differently based on their own play style, what they do. Minecraft is probably one of the biggest examples of this. Everybody who's played Minecraft has done the same thing. You punch a tree to get wood, you build a pickaxe and an axe, you punch more trees, you start digging. We all know that gameplay loop. But what you do from that point forward is entirely different. Somebody recreated, the Starship Enterprise in Minecraft. Somebody else did Lord of the Rings. There are people who hold classes in Minecraft, build towns, and all kinds of crazy things. And the point is that the design is set up to accommodate for that. So some of the games that they're showing here, we did play Dead in Vinland, as well as I did get a key for Staxel. It was kind of like a sort of like a pseudo Minecraft Stardew Valley kind of game. And again, for these kinds of games that have been doing well, there are those that it's not just, I buy this game, it's a 2-hour play and then I'm done, I never see it again. It's, I buy it, I can experience it differently, and I can talk to my friends about it. Now, with that said, though, it does lead into something. I'm going to actually pause it right here. I'll leave that on the screen as his MO for the talk there. But I think it does. I think Jason was kind of skirting around one topic that he didn't mention. That the games that have done really well, the ones that are making unique situation generators, are also those that, for the most part, have seen continued development. Again, League of Legends, Hearthstone, Fortnite, and Overwatch, those are not one-and-done games by any stretch of the imagination. Especially something like Fortnite, as we were just talking about earlier, with them releasing weekly content. And I think he kind of stopped short of discussing the fact that the games that have done well have had to have seen more work done to them than just simply releasing a game. Now, I do agree with him on the fact that the idea of just releasing again, as he describes, a consumable game is very risky these days. And I've seen a few independent developers who have been doing that. One of the guys that we've had on, and I follow him on Twitter, he keeps releasing like very small games, very casual titles that are designed around like 20 to 30 minutes of gameplay. And it may only be like $1 or $2 on Steam, but nobody's buying it, or very few people are taking a look at it. And it does raise a very interesting question that I want to ask everyone. Are you willing to spend more money on uniqueness? As in, if you see 2 games on Steam, one is like a very casual, let's say it's like a brick breaker game. I forget the old school title. That was the name of it. Let's say it's a brick breaker game for 99 cents. And then next to that on Steam is this crazy, let's say it's an action roguelike game with a unique aesthetic for $15. And which one would you be willing to spend money on? Something that you're going to be finished in, half hour, maybe less? Or something that sounds very much like an involved title, something that you've never played before? And that's what he's kind of arguing, that the days that, and we've said this, hi All About Games, and it's something that we've said before, that the days where you can release something bargain bin and still expect to do well, I think are over. And it does unfortunately raise a very big problem. You have to commit more to get a game to be successful. Again, the games that we talk about that we've enjoyed here on the channel and in my own personal collection are all very unique original titles. They were not made in 2 to 3 months. In many cases, they took 6 months to a year plus at minimum to come out. I know Renowned Explorers was in development for, I think, a year, maybe a year and a half. Descenders, I think that was in development for a few years as well. Children of Morta, I'm sure that took a while. But the point is that you have to put more into a game in order to get it to be a release, or to get it to be a success. And you cannot just bank on, again, I'm going to spend, I think this goes back to another thing that I've said before. For those of you who are longtime fans, I hate the phrase, just make games. That is the secret to success in the game industry. And I think this is what Jason was talking about. And he brought this up at the beginning of the presentation, that he's made over, I think, 18 video games. And maybe only 3 of them were a success. But the point is that if, let's say, over a year, let's say every 2 months you make a video game, a very small, very simple game. So 2 months a game, so that would be 6 games a year you're making. If you're just making 6 very simple, very, everyone has seen it before, there's nothing that drives people to it kind of games, you're not really growing as a developer. But on the other hand, though, we could also say there's a problem with people who invest too much in a unique game. The people who will spend 3 to 5 years of their lives trying to make their dream game to only have it, blow up in their face. And with all this talk about indie success and being an indie developer, I'm sure I'm summoning Mike right now. He should be showing up in chat any second now. But when it comes to success or the Indiepocalypse, again, it's a very weird case for a lot of developers. Because, again, we go back onto his slide here. Where was it? Like he said right here, with this kind of revenue, keep in mind that Jason is a solo developer. He didn't pay a team. He didn't have, dozens of people working on this game for him. Making that amount of money as a single developer, that's pretty much enough to live off of for quite a while, especially if you're not, living an extravagant life. We talked about this before with something like the Dwarf Fortress developers, who, other than having that unfortunate emergency medical issue that they had to get the game published, they were living off of these sales or the donations and support that Dwarf Fortress fans were giving them. But for somebody else, though, if let's say this was a 3-man or a 5 to 10 person team, making $685,595 would probably be considered a massive failure for them. And it's a very tough point for a lot of developers to deal with, is that you have to understand that success is not universal. That one developer's success can be another one's failure. Again, everybody jokes, of course, about EA and AAA publishers when they say that, our game sold 2 million copies, it's a colossal failure. While there are developers who would probably kill for those numbers. But this goes with a point that I want to talk about. I think I still need to make that piece. about why it's important to define what a video game is. Because, as we're going to be talking about in our Weird Games segment in a few minutes, that a lot of people think that I can make anything and it's a video game and it will sell well. But that's not really the case. And as we're going to look on itch.io and on Keymailer, you're going to see just what kind of games people are releasing on the low end of the scale. But I think, again, the one part that Jason didn't discuss, again, is the fact that many of these games that are doing well have far longer development cycles. And like we said, that's the big point about unique situation generators. That they're not something you can just make in 2 months, put it out there, PewDiePie plays your game. Oh yeah, he mentioned that PewDiePie has yet to play 1 Hour, One Life. Maybe when that happens, he'll update his chart. Now, he did of course mention that the change in terms of coverage was a major part about this. And we've talked about this before with this idea of stream-friendly games. That, let me go back to full here because I think we're done with that footage. That many people or many games that have succeeded were in spite of not being all that amazing, but again eliciting a crazy reaction. How many people did react videos to Layers of Fear 2? Or I think Disney XD is doing that other show about they're doing another season of, YouTubers play wacky games, the series. And there are plenty of games that have succeeded like that. But again, I think ultimately I do agree with Jason's point, and it's again something we've talked about, that you cannot release low budget games anymore and expect them to do well. Now, what's considered high budget, that is a discussion easily for another time. And unfortunately, I think for a lot of developers, as we've said, many people are going to enter this industry think, I'm going to make this experimental, very emotionally driven game and people are going to love it, and then find maybe 5 people buy it. And even mechanically driven games may not do well along those lines. Again, Vision Software says one of my favorite games of this year. It's one that I'm pretty sure the only people who know about it are those of you who watched me play it. And as of today, let's see how many reviews it has. 7. It has had 7 reviews and it has been out since January. So yeah, unfortunately, while I love that game, it basically failed commercially. I mean, again, you are not making a living off of a game that only sold 7 copies. But this is, I think, the other point that Jason didn't talk about. That there is so much more to getting a game to be successful than just designing it. Because his point about unique situation generators or unique event generators, that can still copy, or that can still describe many indie games that came out that still failed or didn't do that well. Asura, another favorite game of mine, is a Indian mythology action roguelike. I want to see how many reviews it sits at. Okay, it has 451, so that game definitely bounced back. But again, that could still be considered a failure depending upon how much time and work was put into your specific game. But you have to understand that there's so much more to succeed in this industry than just having a really good game or a very unique game. And we could easily segue into talking about marketing and again, what it means to put your game out there. But I think that would probably be beyond the stream or beyond this topic. But to, I guess, summarize, again, the industry, or especially the independent side, has changed. And you need your game to be unique in order for it to stand out. And the days where you could kind of play it safe and still marginally succeed, I think are gone. I think a lot of developers are feeling that. That, as Draken said, you can't just say, I'm going to make my take on Mario, and if 50 people buy it, I'll break even. Or, Stardew Valley was really great. I'm just going to make that, and people will want to buy it. But it's going to take me, let's say, 4 years to make it. But surely I'll be able to recoup that investment. And this is definitely not the same as on the mobile side. That still seems to be populated heavily by monetized games and clones of other titles. But at least on the PC and even on the console side, you have to do something to get notice. And it has to be more than just releasing, a meme game like Goat Simulator. Or that, what was it, Black Tiger, Black Lion, some kind of very low budget game that somehow blew up on PSN. And there's just so much that goes into game development that I could pretty much we could turn this into like an hour long lecture. Maybe that'll be one of the lectures I'll develop for my presentations at some point. But with that said, let's switch gears and look at what Weirdness is coming out this week, and then we'll go to our final topic. But let's see what we have here while I take another sip of soda. Alright. Now this game I actually got a press key for, but I didn't get a chance to do any coverage on it. It's kind of like a turn-by-turn situation dealer. It's not really a city builder. I can't think of any games off the top of my head that it's like, though. But maybe we'll try a play of it, or maybe I'll get around to doing some coverage now that I remember that it's out. I'm still not getting a key for Octopath, sadly. We did play some of Sigma Theory, and it was an interesting game. There's that My Friend Pedro. Ebola. I wonder what this is about. Ooh. Ooh. Dark, Scary Corridors. I do love the character's name is Logan Johnson. That sounds so generic, it's not even funny. Wait, so it's Ebola but it turns into zombies? There's like no footage of the enemies in this in all the videos or the screenshots. And all would cry beware? That's a title right there. Here's another pro tip for developers. If your title, or if the words of your title take up more than half your thumbnail art, it may be too long of a title. Virtual debating chamber. Okay, what is this? Ooh. That does not look like Los Angeles. Old school style, fast paced first person shooter with a Metroidvania structure. Okay then. The eyes are coming for you. This game looks familiar to me, but I can't place it. Zup. Oh. Valfaris is getting a demo coming out this week. I hope they add more to it since when we last played it. World's Night. Or World's Nick. What the hell? Like, this is exactly what we were talking about in our last section. Like, I'm sure this developer didn't spend years designing this game, and if they did, then, wow, let's put it like that. But, like, who is going to want to play this game? Especially when we see more innovative design coming from platformers and even the Kaizo genre. What? I think more work went into this quote than it did making the levels. Locomotives. Pack with a witch. I'm afraid to click on that one. What? Whoa. I was not expecting this from that thumbnail art. I don't know what this game is. Wait. Enjoy fast turn-based combat. That seems like a double negative to me. Well, folks, this is a game that's coming out. Should we do a run of it? Are you gonna get me demonetized, Dragon, if I look that up now? Real man got 100? What? I don't know what this game is. And this is what we were also saying, like, by these screenshots, can any one of you tell me what this gameplay loop is? There's a pig. I think these are trees or spikes. I can't tell. The world may never know. Okay. Shadow Fencer Theater. What the? What? So this is a web game. But again, this is like a very casual arcade style game that, other than that name, doesn't really inspire, I think, a lot of people to play it. Alright, poke, please no more spamming. Attack of the Evil Poop. Well, I'll give them credit, they got it on name. Mad Rabbit? Ooh. And what did I just say a few minutes ago? That developers try to copy the success of other games, and it just turns out looking very derivative. Top-down shooter in the best traditions of Nuclear Throne and Enter the Gungeon. Again, it looks like a clone of Nuclear Throne, even with like the spread shot weapon. I mean, this looks very similar to Nuclear Throne, but of course nowhere near as detailed. Super Web Kittens? The Last Escape of Yeti. Ooh. Oh, I think Shark is getting a pain in his head right now. If he saw some of these games I'm looking at. Ooh, it has rock music. That's a very important plus. Penn and Teller have a VR game? Okay. But again, like, and this is the other point, so many games are being released. We've gone through 5 pages, and we're not even past a week of coming out. Nothing. Will nothing ever come out, folks? Uber cold. Dude Simulator still is not out yet. But yeah, that is a week of games coming out on Steam. Alright, let's see what's over here. Here's a quid. Oh, that was the game we looked at already. Looks like a World of Warcraft spin there. Nope. Oof. What the heck is that? I'm even more nervous to click on games on itch than I am on Keymailer. Wait a minute. I'm seeing a lot of games that we've already played on the new release list. That's kind of weird to me. Huh. Curious Expedition. We, of course, know what that one is. Seems like there's a much better list this week on itch.io. Real-time strategy game set. Let's see. What is this about? Looks like it's a wave-based RTS again. Not bad. Yeah, it's kind of hard to find those diamonds in the rough on itch. They're there. It's just very, very hard to find them. Oh, good. Seizure warning on a game. Are we seeing more Game Jam games? What? Peter's fighting game prototype. Again, you can put anything you want on itch. Hi, Neil. Robe Road? This game I have a press key, or I got a key for. I got that one on sale. Oh, good. Flavor Town VR is on sale. What? Don't touch me. I'm sure we all want to play this one, right? Nope, we're seeing more Game Jam titles coming up. Trying to see if there's anything like interesting showing up on itch. Poor suit? Okay. Well, on the positive side, we're actually seeing some games with designs on them this week. Or gameplay loops. I think there's supposed to be an indie sale coming up, right? Not on itch, but just in general. What? Oh, okay, so there's another Game Jam around. So I'm sure that's where we'll be seeing a lot of these. What? Ooh, a 3-hour game. Again, there's a lot of stuff coming out, but I just don't know how much of this people are going to want to play. What the hell is that? Wait. There's not even any data about that game. I am not clicking on that one, folks. I feel like that is inviting a lot of trouble. Alright. I think that's enough weird games for 1 week. Alright, let's get to our final topic, and we'll wrap things up after that. But I want to talk a little bit more about the importance of first impressions. Yep, we have certainly said that many times, Neil. But where this topic comes from is playing They Are Billions. Now, the game. If you want to send me a link on Discord or off topic, maybe do that, Dragon. That way I'll have it there so I can remember it. But They Are Billions has been out, or officially came out as of this week. And the game itself has been in early access for several years now. And the original concept for the game, or like the very first version, basically gave us the entire scope of that game in terms of its design and the core gameplay. So it was developed. It only shows me the release date. It doesn't show me when it was first put on. But the game itself has not changed all that much since its early access, and a lot of people have been complaining about how bad it is from a first-time perspective. When you load the game up, there's no tutorials, there's no real way of learning the game. And a lot of people are arguing about the difficulty of the campaign, the Iron Man saving, and of course you have the hardcore fans mocking them and saying that it's their problem, the game was meant to be hard, things like that. But They Are Billions is another title that suffers from not really understanding the first-timer or new player's perspective. And it's something that we see from a lot of indie developers, that they'll get so caught up in designing a game or focusing on a specific fandom or a specific group of or a specific genre, they don't see how this game is going to be approached by somebody who hasn't played it. And They Are Billions runs into that issue that you buy it and there's just nothing there if you aren't already a huge fan of it. And we're seeing more developers kind of suffer when it comes to this new player's experience, because it is something that I don't think a lot of indie developers really get a chance to develop. It's something that we see more in major companies that can have entire playtesting sessions, QA departments, and things like that. But for a lot of smaller developers, it is very important to look at your game and understand, what does this mean for somebody who has never touched this game, whether they've never touched the genre, or if they're fans of the genre but they just want to know what makes your game different. A lot of Paradox Interactive games kind of fall into the same category as well, that you've played one Paradox Interactive game that gives you a massive leg up, once you've learned it, that is. But trying to go into one of their games blind, it's basically like jumping into the ocean and being expected to swim perfectly. But as we talked about in the last part, with making games that are unique situation generators, a lot of the games that have done really well have managed to be very accommodating towards new players. But when you design a new game, you also have to leverage that with trying to, again, onboard or have that onboarding process. Earlier, Draken mentioned, of course, about platformers. And while the platformer genre has been tried and tested and could arguably be done to death, it's still very easy for a new player to grasp. Again, just about everybody has seen or played a platformer in their lives. You don't need a 30-minute tutorial to teach someone how to jump. But you may need a very lengthy tutorial if you're trying to teach them how to play Europa Universalis. And for a lot of developers out there, they try to do all kinds of little things or very simple things to try to make their game as easy to learn. But if you don't build a proper experience to teach the player, it usually ends up making your game very unaccommodating for them. Even something like Cuphead, despite its difficulty, still had a very easy to process tutorial. And when we talk about this stuff, it seems like it's a very this is like design 100 kind of talk. Make it easy to learn level 1, understand tutorial design. But it's still something that a lot of developers tend to fail on, whether you are designing an established genre or not. And I'm trying to think of some examples of games that did well without a tutorial, without an official tutorial. Slay the Spire and The Binding of Isaac, I think, are both really good examples of that. And they kind of created like level 1 or the first playthrough as kind of being your onboarding for those games. They don't unlock very hard challenges, or the game is hard to begin with, but you are free to kind of mess around. You're not being tasked to play the game perfectly. Children of Morta that we played on stream would be another example of that. That even though you can die and fail, the game pretty much lets you play it at your own pace. But it still has that opening section where you learn how to move, attack, dodge, etc. Like, something like the Outer Wilds, to me, here's a question. For those of you who watch me play that game, how many of you think that game had a very easy to follow beginning, or teaching people how to play it? Because I think for me, I still found it very hard to understand, what are the functions of the ship, especially how to fly that thing. But if you're familiar with the space sim genre, it would be a lot easier. Which, conversely, that's basically how I played, or the opposite of me playing They Are Billions. I knew how to play a real-time strategy to begin with, so that gave me a leg up if you've never touched an RTS before. But we've played a lot of games, unfortunately, this year that just did not do well in terms of that first-player experience. That game, what was it? Seed of Resilience, that we looked at and I did a video on, is another good example. And that is a great one of, again, how developers fail to understand what it meant to teach a player. When you load that game up, there is no mention of tutorial. It just says sandbox or mission. So what's a new player supposed to do there? The same thing with They Are Billions. That the campaign doesn't necessarily teach you how to play the game properly, but the survival mode just throws you, into the woods by yourself. And again, these are things that anyone, or if you worked at a major studio or understand the onboarding process, would have caught immediately. But it's oftentimes where developers will fail when designing their game. Let me see, I'm trying to find some other examples here as I'm looking on Steam. Even Prison Architect by Introversion also, or they knew about that new player's experience, and they designed the first 10 minutes of the game to kind of teach you how to play it. And again, you need that information. You can't just expect the player to thumb through all manner of things and expect to become masters at your game. Going back to Subnautica that we mentioned in the last part, one of the best parts about that game was how it taught you very organically. You are starving, go find food. Okay, you need to repair something, go find these basic resources. And then just build on top of that. One game I'm very curious to see what they're going to do is Factorio, in terms of how they're going to try and make that one, or add a tutorial, or 1.0. Let's see. Oh my god. Although I think at this point Factorio may never be released. It may just never come out. They are on version, what is that? 0.17 of that game. And that one's been developed, for 5 to 6 years now. And for a lot of the games that have become successes, they may just succeed in spite of not having a good tutorial. Kerbal Space Program being a prime example of that, where the game's uniqueness is so special or so outstanding that it just gets by on the fact that there's no other game like that. Even something like Five Nights at Freddy's got by on its uniqueness by the fact that nobody was doing a game like that before. But now, of course, everybody is making it a horror game like Five Nights. But for a lot of this is one of those points where a lot of AAA companies don't have any problems with it, because they understand what it's like to design tutorials and do playtesting. And while those games may usually end up being somewhat derivative or being kind of a standard experience, they design their games so that anyone can learn and play them. And ultimately, that goes a long way towards making sure people are going to be able to play it. Let's see. But again, when many developers design these titles for the first time, especially when they spend 3 to 5 years, it's very easy for them to overlook the new player. Sorry about that. Basically going, I learned this game, it's easy for me, why aren't you learning it? We've all heard those stories about developers who, when they show their game off at like little conferences or trade shows, go, give me the controller, you're just not understanding it, or you're not figuring it out right, or playing it right. And again, when somebody has to say that about your game, that is a massive failure on the design's point of view. And these titles that try to go unique like that, you always have to think about what it's like for somebody to play your game for the first time. And a lot of the people who are kind of attacking critics of they are billions, again, they're approaching it like, it was easy for me to learn, why aren't you following it? Or everybody's favorite, get good. Or get good when we talk about these games. But again, there's a very fine line between a game that's challenging to play and a game that's just difficult to play. And usually when people complain or have trouble learning your game, it's because it's on the difficult side of things. And when we have games like, even something like Duskers, that when Tim Keenan was working on that game, he did redesign and alter like the basics of that game to make it easier for people to follow. And there's always that push and pull between, adhering to your core vision or to your core fan base, but at the same time trying to make your game more accommodating. This has been one of the biggest points of, or one of the biggest diversion or decisive, I think I've lost a term there. Divisive points when it comes to Dwarf Fortress. That, on one hand, Dwarf Fortress is a game that for a lot of people, it's the only game you will ever need to play. It's a massive title. You will never run out of things to do. It's this amazing game. But for a lot of people, it is horrible to look at. It's hard to understand. There's no semblance of onboarding to it. And the new player experience is just, non-existent. And one of the reasons, or one of the big pushes for when it was picked up by Kit Fox Games and kind of released officially like that, was for the very reason to allow people to make it more acceptable, to make it more accommodating towards new players. Because at the end of the day, if nobody wants to play your game, then it doesn't matter how unique or original it is. And it's very hard, I think, for a lot of people to talk about this. Again, with Dwarf Fortress, I am sure that for a few of you watching this right now, you've probably played that game and you've loved it, and you have no idea why people are complaining about it like this. But for a lot of people, it is a very hard game to get into. And when we talk about this kind of discussions of UI design, playability, and things like that, these are usually simple things to streamline your game. Not dumb it down, but again, make it easier for people to learn. And when you don't think about your game like that, it can be one of the nails in the coffin, especially if your game is unique. Now, this is not the same discussion as we were talking about with the Jason Roward piece, of making a lot of small, very safe games and wonder why nobody's playing them. Again, you've seen one platformer, you've seen one indie horror game, you've seen them all. But what we're talking about are games that are trying to be something unique and different, and then wonder why nobody's playing their game because they have no idea what your game is about. And you cannot just count on your super fans to kind of save your game like that. And I'm just trying to think about I'm just trying to read very quickly about what are some more discussions about They Are Billions. And again, you have the fans making fun of the people who are coming in, going, this game is too hard. Why am I dying all this time? And of course, everybody is saying, it's the players' fault that they're not enjoying this game. And unfortunately, that's a very bad attitude to have for your title. That you should never be, attacking people for not understanding a game. Because if they are having confusion about how your game works, then that is definitely a big point to maybe alter your design or do a little bit more in terms of a tutorial. And like we've said, for a lot of these games that succeed in spite of that, I thought it's also the Dark Souls of city builders as well. But the games that succeed in spite of this, like again the Paradox Interactive titles, most likely their fan base is never going to learn this lesson. Because it is so entrenched that it's very hard to teach people or to say that there is a problem with this game. Because they have people who love the Paradox Interactive titles, that they will buy them hand over fist whenever a new game comes out. But it's that difference between what Jason was talking about, that it's the difference in terms of success. For smaller titles, getting 30,000, 100,000 copies, that's a success. Why change what isn't broken there? That is a good question there, Paul. I'll get to that one in a second. But when we talk about these issues like that these games tend to just kind of coast on their success. Why fix what isn't broken if all your fans say that your game is perfect? But as we've said before, that horrible feedback can be either universally positive as well as universally negative. 100 people saying your game sucks, you're a lazy developer, doesn't give you much to go on. But it's in the same breath, 100 people saying, I love your game, it's perfect, I wouldn't change a thing. How do I improve my game on that? Oh, thank you, Paul. Oh yeah, we did that play of Alan Wake. Oh yeah, that was a good one. What were you talking about with that? Uh-oh, now you got me distracted for a second. What was the game that we played lately that I thought was going to be like Alan Wake? Ooh, there's a bit of a challenge. We just did a stream of a game where I said I thought this is what Alan Wake was going to be. An open world horror game that we just played. Not that remothered one. If anyone can mention that, let's see, maybe I can look in the games that we just played, because we just had that discussion. Was it? Oh my goodness. It wasn't that game we played, yeah, thank you, that's right. Evil Within 2, oh my god. This is what happens when you play too many games, folks. It all just, blurs together in my mind. But yeah, that was the game that I was saying about in terms of that. But getting back to the topic, that when you're trying you guys are distracting me now. Dun 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 dun. I liked it. I thought it was mechanically better than the Evil Within 2, but I felt the Evil Within 1 had more style to it. Like, it stood out more to me. But back to the topic, that a lot of people, for a lot of these fan bases that become entrenched, that success to them may be, a fan base of 30,000 people. And like we've said, when it comes to success in the game industry, everybody's different. What I just described, what I just said is 30,000 people playing your game. How many developers right now watching this would, throw a celebratory party if 30,000 people were playing their game right now? For some of them, or for some people, 30,000 might as well just be zero, because that is not enough to sustain that game. Even something like Lawbreakers, so at one point had what? Like 5 people playing that game, did not do all that well. But when we talk about fan base that becomes so entrenched like that, the problem is that you don't see what it's like to play the game from a new player perspective. And in many cases, it is possible that your fan base could grow exponentially if you do simple things. And a lot of people will decry that again as dumbing down. Oh, you made easier, your tooltips are easier now, you're just trying to cater towards, the casual gamers or stuff like that. But for these games, a lot of what we talk about in terms of playability aren't grand fixes. Like, this is not stuff that will take months and years of development and millions of dollars to fix. In a lot of cases, it could be as simple as designing a better tutorial. But the point, of course, there is that what is a better tutorial for a game? Like, this is the grand question. I'll get to Paul's question after this, but here is my grand design quiz for those of you watching this right now. How would you design an easy-to-follow tutorial for Stellaris? Or Europa Universalis? Or hell, we could go all in. How would you design a tutorial for Hearts of Iron? Or what's the latest Hearts of Iron game, actually? A casual tutorial, Hearts of Iron 4. Somebody designed the easy-to-follow tutorial for Hearts of Iron 4. And I knew somebody was going to say what Draken just said there. Yep, a lot of people have turned to Let's Play videos. But unfortunately, that doesn't apply here. Because a Let's Play video exists outside of the game. How would you design a tutorial that would allow somebody to follow what's going on in Hearts of Iron? They did that with EY... What's the name of that game? Cyber Nancy? Oh, I'm sure I just described a game that most of you have never heard of. Was it EYE? Here it is. EYE Divine Cybermancy. How many of you played that game? How many of you even know what that game is about? But they did just that. That when you try to play a tutorial, it opens up a YouTube video of how to play that game. And again, you cannot rely on YouTube videos like that, unfortunately. And yeah, if I could figure out how to design a tutorial for Hearts of Iron 4, that would probably make me famous overnight. If I could be the one who developed that tutorial. Hey, Mike. But, getting back to Paul's question, because this is a very good one. Dark Souls tutorials that teach a player the basics, but then after that you get very little help. And that's kind of a very tricky point, because the Dark Souls games, or the Souls-likes, tend to have, or at least not counting Sekiro, are usually good in terms of playability, even though you may not see that. As we've said, you should, as a very good game design challenge for anybody watching, you should take extensive notes or follow what is the quote-unquote first area of a Dark Souls games, or a Dark Souls game. So what I'm counting is the tutorial to the official first area. So in Dark Souls, that would be Undead Asylum to probably, I would count to the, what was his name? The Taurus Demon? No. The very first boss after the Asylum Demon, that giant guy on the top of the castle wall. I would count that as tutorial to first area. In Demon Souls, that would be tutorial to stage 1-1. And see how they design and pace out the level. Because what these games tend to do is kind of teach you very organically. And in some cases, it does make things very easy to follow. But on the other hand, though, they could probably do a better job in terms of the underlying systems, the crafting, stat allocations, things like that. And I think that's probably the one area where From Software didn't really do all that good of a job with, at least from Demon Souls to Dark Souls 3. Sekiro has no stat allocation. Thank you, Taurus Demon. Sekiro has no stat allocation. There's very little in terms of the underlying systems on that front. But the Dark Souls games could probably have done a better job in terms of explaining the UI and stats and stuff like that. It does from a gameplay standpoint, they're not bad in terms of, again, the new player experience. The first area will teach you. It's going to be a hard lesson, obviously. I'm so surprised when I replayed Dark Souls 3 last week that I beat Champion Gundyr, or no, not Champion Gundyr, or we'll just say the first form of Gundyr, without dying, especially as our naked guy with a club strategy. But those games can be very hard to kind of teach a new player. And it's, again, one of those things that the fan base has become so cemented that, just try to, don't do this because it will be very punishing for you. But just post. Imagine posting on, a Dark Souls 3 forum or a Dark Souls fan site. Oh, Lord, do that. And say, I'm a new player and I can't figure out this game at all. Is it really that good? And just see what are the responses that you'll get. I'm sure the fans will be warm and welcoming to you if you say that on a fan site. Or on a Reddit group. Of course, Reddit being very friendly to newcomers and outsiders there. But for a lot of these games, it's a very easy track for developers to fall into. That they'll hear from the vocal minority, 100 people saying, I love your game, it's perfect, don't change a word, don't listen to these outsiders. Everybody's favorite hot term, the SJWs and blah 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 and all that stuff. But if you want your game to grow and you want to actually succeed, you have to understand that line between streamlining and dumbing down. And the very best games, no matter how easy or hard they are still accommodating. They still have playability aspects to them. I knew I threw that out to hurt a few of you watching. But, hold on, while I'm recollecting my thoughts, I need a drink. As I'm actually collecting my thoughts, look up EYE Divine Cybermancy and see if you can figure out what that game is by watching people play it. Yep. And the Dark Souls games, again, we could easily... What's our time? Jeez, I've been talking for almost an hour and a half now. Why aren't you guys stopping me? But, yeah, the very first time you play a Demon Souls or a Dark Souls game, that experience you cannot get back again. And it's a very tough thing, I think, for a lot of developers and for a lot of fans to understand. For instance, I could probably teach a tutorial on Renowned Explorers. I've played that game enough times that I understand that. But trying to approach that as a new player... But trying to teach a new player can be very difficult. And it's why when you're doing playtesting, you need to look at things from both somebody who's never played your game as well as an established fan. Yeah, me too, Neil. I'm pretty sure I played that for about 10 minutes and went, what the hell am I looking at here? And then I just did, the back away slowly. Or, virtually back away slowly, because I can't really do that sitting at a computer. But, again, even, every game, no matter how complicated it can can always have improvement in terms of its UI and its playability. Now, UI design may be a little unfair. That you cannot... Like, UI is something that, again, we could teach like a 2-hour lesson on UI design. And the thing about UI is that when you start changing it, it can lead to this, cascading event of you always trying to alter. Like, it's UI is one of those things like the core gameplay loop that if you can get it right as early as possible, it's going to make your development a lot easier. Like, if you have to change your design or your UI 75 or 50% of your way done, that is going to be a major blow to your game. Yeah. And again, you can only have, as Paul's saying, you can only have one first-time experience. And as a developer, you have to understand that. Because that first-time experience is going to make or break your game. Like, I don't want to put you on the spotlight here, Paul, but I want to ask you. Like, when you played when you played your first Souls game, and it got a little overwhelming, obviously, I'm assuming that you pushed through that. Yeah, that happened to me. Oh yeah, that's always bad when they change the UI conventions and then your brain is like stuck in two different UIs. But I'm sure, like, when you play Demon Souls or Dark Souls for the first time and it felt overwhelming, that you pushed through that. And that's what a lot of developers try to bank on. That, yes, my game is hard and it's confusing and it's going to be difficult for a new player, but if you get past that, then it's going to be this amazing game. Another phrase I despise, the real game begins at, what could that be? It could begin, after 30 hours of gameplay. Then the game starts. Or as we've all, jokingly, comment on, the real Dark Souls experience begins. And again, it's very easy for developers to fall into that trap that, yes, my game is confusing and hard, but if somebody plays for at least 15 hours, then they're going to love my game and worship it. But how many people are going to be willing to do that versus how many people are going to play your game to begin with? And a lot of people will only look at their hardcore fans and think, my game is perfect, why change anything? But when it becomes a difference of having a little bit of, or having, some fans, or having a lot more, oh yeah. Again, how many people jumped for joy when they beat Father Gascone for the first time in Bloodborne? How about how many people jumped for joy when they beat those damn werewolves on that bridge for the first time? And again, when we talk about hard games like this, like hard games, again, this is going to sound very stupid, hard games are hard to design a tutorial for. Because... oh yeah, and Fury, another good example. But you have to always approach a game when you're designing it with some level of playability, or more importantly, that first-timer experience. Because, again, if something is confusing to a first-timer, it's going to be confusing to a lot of people who play that. And most importantly, if you have veterans, and here's our pro game design tip of the stream. If there is something that is confusing to veterans of your game, we're talking 30 plus hours in and they're still confused by something, that should be something you should consider changing or streamlining. Because if they're having trouble, what's it like for, again, somebody who's never played your game before? And I think this one will be one of our final topics. So if anyone has any questions about this, get them in now. But this is, again, one of the things that a lot of people joke about when it comes to AAA games. Oh, we need to have, a 5-minute tutorial. We need to have that section where it pops up on screen. Press the left analog stick to move your character. Press A to jump. There's an enemy coming at you. Press right trigger to shoot your gun. And I am sure for everybody watching this right now, you're all rolling your eyes, either figuratively or literally, when I just described that. But that stuff is still important, because they know that somebody's going to play a game like Uncharted or Spider-Man or The Evil Within or pick any AAA game, and it's going to be their first game. Press F to pay respects. Yeah. And you have to accommodate for that. Now, better ways of doing that are more on the organic side. And for those of you who don't know that term, when we say organic tutorial, we mean that the game space itself teaches the player without having to explicitly stop them. As Paul was posting there. That the level itself, or the level design, I knew that was going to bring up discussions, that the level design teaches the player. So it's basically like, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like, here's like a simple way. Like, let's say that my hands are the floor of a level in a 2D platformer. The player comes to a wall, and they get stuck by it. You can't walk through a wall. So what you start doing? You start pressing buttons. I hit the A button, my character does his little jump. The player starts putting one together there, that I press A, my character jumps. Jumping allows me to get over an obstacle. If I combine jumping with moving, my character will do that. Now, what I just described over like 20 seconds, that happens within milliseconds of playing a game. But I jump over that wall. Now I come to a pit. If I fall into the pit, my character gets stuck. So what do? Well, if pressing A and pushing forward lets my character jump over a wall, then maybe, just maybe, doing the same thing will get them over a pit. And again, when we talk about organic tutorial design, is about being able to understand, in order of complexity, how your game works. For anyone who has played a puzzle platformer or a platformer that does like very weird or unique obstacle designs, you will always see the first explanation being like very basic. We're talking remedial. It could be as simple as like everyone remembers the classic Mega Man platformer obstacle with the disappearing and reappearing platforms. So what they'll do is they'll just set up like one disappearing, reappearing platform like right here, and all the players do is like jump up to here. So there is no danger. There is no element of failure. But the player is learning how this platform is working. I hope all of you are enjoying my hand modeling here. But they get through that, and now the designer knows that they understand how that platform works. So then the next version, they may have to do 2 platforms. That'll be better, right? 3 platforms, 5 platforms. The very first version of the disappearing, reappearing platform is not going to be, everybody remembers, or anyone who's played Mega Man. Mega Man 2's Heat Man level. The final challenge in that stage is just a very long gauntlet of disappearing, reappearing platforms. You would never put that as the very first obstacle in your game. That would be insane to do. Well, if you want, Draken, look up. I can actually Google this really fast. Mega Man 2 Heat Man. And look at that stage in terms of the obstacle design in that final section. Because, again, good design would not have that be the very first level. And that is a really good point, again, as I can use my superpower of relating things to video games, or relating these discussions together. That takes us back to They Are Billions. The very first level in that campaign is horrible. It is absolutely horrible for a new player. It may have tutorial lessons, But you're hitting the player when that first wave of undead come at the end of the level. A new player would have no idea how to properly prepare for that. Again, people who are established, who've played the Arbalians before, they know exactly what to do. Or they should know. But the second level in that tutorial, where there's no threat of a zombie horde, felt more like the first level than the first level did. And again, and here's a really good point. The developers of They Are Billions did a blog post where they said, and I'm going to actually see if I can pull this up really fast, so I want to get this quote, because it kind of sums up this issue. 1 second. Here we go. In fact, we're going to go back to a full screen for a second here. We're going to go back to our demo. So I want you guys to see this. So, if you look at the third paragraph, during the development of the campaign, we had a few dozens, I don't think English is their first language, very different testers playing the campaign from start to finish, and always in challenging difficulty. I am very certain that the people who play tested the campaign for They Are Billions were all veteran players. They were all people who knew how that game was to play. Oh, can I zoom in here? Let's see. It's going to look a little stretched out. I'll send that back when we're done here. Yeah, we only need to see the campaign improvements. Yeah, they just change the difficulty around. But again, going back up here, that again, I'm sure nobody who play tested the They Are Billions campaign were new players. And we see this, I think, again, for a lot of developers who kind of make this mistake. That when... Oh, control scroll. Let's see. That would have been better. 1 second. Oh, now I gotta recorrect this. 1 second. Uh-oh. On-air tech support. I know you guys love it when this happens. But I can do this a little bit better here. Come on. Every time I do this, I always forget how OBS works. Okay. That should be better. There we go. I'll fix the rest of it after the stream. But, again, for a lot of developers, they'll save new game modes or special things for 1.0, and it will not have any real or valid playtesting done to it. Again, they'll say that if there's testing a new mode or something expensive or very rare or unique, they're going to save it for their most die-hard fans. But you still need new players to look at. Even Darkest Dungeon ran into that problem with the final dungeon and having to patch it and rebalance the ending of the game. Because a lot of people felt that it wasn't all that fair, all that well done for a new player. Or just even for players trying to play it. And again, you should always look at your game from a new player's experience. Because ultimately, if you want your fan base to grow, it's going to come from new players. And if you don't do that, then you're going to be left just scratching your head as to why is nobody playing my game? Well, maybe it's because nobody can figure out how to play your game to begin with. But I think with that, how long have we been going? We just went over an hour 40. I think that's all I really have to say on the topic, at least for right now. I still need to write that piece about what does success mean in the game industry. But I think for our topic for today, I think we're going to end things here. My voice is like going in and out. I'm not sure if you can hear it at all. But thank you for everyone who's tuning in, whether you are a new or returning fan. Be sure to check out the Discord and Patreon link down below. The Discord is open to everybody. I'll be back tonight around 9:30 EST for our regular stream. I think we're going to be playing Alpha Protocol. I'll be back next Sunday around 3:34 for our regular show. But come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until then, have a great rest of the Sunday afternoon, or Sunday evening now, and I will see you all later.